Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of The Rest is Content, a podcast all about social media, content, and community building online. In this episode, I'm having a chinwag with my good friend and very talented social media strategist, Beth Thomas. We spoke about the dumping ground effect and how social media accounts can quickly go off their strategies, and why that's a problem. We also spoke about how good social media has moved on from pillars to actually solving business problems, the rise of TikTok Live, and how she and her friend Molly grew their social media following in a very short space of time. But let's start with how she got her first job in social media.
Yeah, so I got the job at Deliveroo. Actually, I was in a bit of a panic to get the job because the company I'd previously worked at had just made basically everybody redundant. It came just after the Brexit saga, and I think they realised it was much cheaper to do everything in Europe rather than have a head office in London. So I was interviewing for a few different places. TikTok and Deliveroo were the main two, and it was, I think, I don't remember it being a crazy interview process. I remember meeting the person that would then be my boss. I remember her giving me tips for my next interview where I met, some higher up people and I had to present. She was obviously on my side and maybe thought, oh, you'd be the right person for the job. So I can't remember what it was, but I remember her saying, they're really interested in X or Y, and me thinking about that, and making sure I got that into some of my answers somehow. But it was such a weird time because it was then just before COVID, and my first day ended up being the first day of COVID lockdown. So I actually never met my team in person. I don't even remember when I met anyone for the first time. Like, my laptop just came in the post, I think. And then I was just like, opened my laptop to be like, what am I doing? And of course, the world was basically shutting down, but Deliveroo was one of the businesses in the UK that could carry on. So it was a crazy time to be part of that and be in the role I was in.
It's like a really convenient time to join because there would have been a lot of companies, like you said, that were downsizing during COVID, whereas Deliveroo is just a perfect kind of blend of like, okay, we're all sat at home, we're getting a little bit of money from the government eventually, let's buy takeaways. Let's sort of, we will go for our walk and that will burn off those calories. So what was, and you say you were only really applying for TikTok and Deliveroo. So you specifically targeted where you wanted to work, or was it just those were the ones that were available?
But yeah, those were the only ones I remember wanting the roles of. I think when you're, and I've been made redundant before that as well, when you're like, am I allowed to, can I swear or no?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So, when you're like, shit, I haven't got a job, or like in 3 weeks, I don't get any more money. So, beggars can't be choosers then. But I remember I was interviewing for TikTok and Deliveroo and thinking, like, these are cool companies, and this, like, I can really see what I could do here. And because they were both growing still very quickly as well. I mean, 2020, most people weren't on TikTok then, especially early 2020. So it was still a really fun place in my brain that I could go and be creative. Yeah, so those were the two that stuck in my mind.
As a forever freelancer, I do know the situation of like, oh, cool, the contract comes to an end tomorrow. Great, I will start looking
No,
yesterday. That's fine. Yeah,
that
it's crazy.
sounds incredibly stressful.
I've done it for 15 years. I'm used to it now. But for the first 5, it was hell. It's amazing. Have you ever freelanced, or have you always only had a job,
Yeah.
like a job, like a job?
I've had jobs. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
really. Done some freelance work like on the side, but it's
yeah.
never been my main source of anything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, totally, totally. Okay, cool. So where did you fit into the there? Where did you fit into the Deliveroo team? Like, what was your role? And like you said, you've not met the team, but you've obviously met
Yeah.
them virtually. So what was that structure like?
Yeah, so it was very different from where I'd always worked previously, because I'd always worked at smaller companies, where there was probably like max 40 people. Whereas I went to Deliveroo and there were maybe God, I don't know if these numbers are right now, like thousand people. Does that sound right? Oh, my brain, I've forgotten. But yeah, they have a huge office that's full. So yeah, it must be more like 1,000. Yeah, so there was like a full comms team, I think, that I sat within. So PR was huge for Deliveroo, which I'd never worked anywhere where so much of the awareness or the how we would deliver brand awareness for Deliveroo came through these PR activations. And I remember sitting in an early meeting with one of the agencies. It's actually, I don't think it's around anymore. It was called Talker Taylor, Troublemaker. Oh, I don't know, something like that. That sounds like the film, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But honest, I remember, and I think this will stick with me forever, being in this meeting. It was still virtual, and them talking about these ideas for this activation, and it honestly blowing my mind because I had never worked with anyone who had shown me this way of like using your brain. This sounds so silly. It was so creative, and I was like, how has anybody come up with that? Like, how do you even start? So that was something that was amazing, was the amount of creativity there of, and me learning so much about how PR works, because I had no clue about that before. And then how those activations could then have social arms on them as well, and then often would be, I guess, like social first, or that's, I assume, where they've taken it now. But yeah, so I've sat in, oh, sorry, the dog is scratching the door, so I just need to stop her doing that because I think
The dog can join the call. I do not mind. I've missed the dog.
Sorry, let me just oh yeah, so I was there and I came in to look after social media for the UK, which then turned into social media for the UK and Ireland, then turned into influencer as well. So it was me and my boss that I guess looked after social. The thing about Deliveroo was that there were so many meetings because social was that, because I think because of COVID as well, no one was outside. So I don't know what was going on with the wider budget, if that all changed. But and because this was the first time I joined, I didn't know if this was normal, but there was so many requests on the social to be supporting the restaurants, the riders, um, the the PR activations. Then we had, I can't remember the right name for it, but you know where you could get like your Sainsbury shop in 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that came onto the platform. So then it was like, well, how are we talking about groceries? Then there were all of the initiatives around, brands just have all this initiatives around everything basically, and it all fell to social quite often. And what I realize now is that we actually didn't have a social media strategy. So that is why we said, like, I couldn't say no to anything, because why was I saying no? I didn't, like, it was just, social was just this dumping ground of where we put everything. And it was really hard as well then, because I think, sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here,
No, no,
but
no.
because now that wouldn't, if I went into a role now, that wouldn't I wouldn't allow that to happen. But I think then I was still young. This was my first like big company. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, I worked at these startups, but this just seemed more legit in
yeah,
my mind. Like, everybody has heard of Deliveroo, and this was a big business. I was like, well, must be how it works in big businesses. And then
yeah.
as I've now worked in other big businesses, and now in the consultancy work with lots of big businesses, I see everywhere works very differently, and just because it is the way things go doesn't mean it's the right way to do things.
Yeah, completely. That sounds so not mad, but like really interesting that like they didn't have a strategy before you came in. So obviously the strategy was going to change when COVID hit because everyone had to pivot during COVID. And when you're a company that can still operate during COVID, you're going to work that to your advantage because people are bored and they're buying. I mean, Amazon did a great job of getting loads more people to buy stuff they don't necessarily need just because they were sitting around. But it sounds really interesting that even before you'd arrived, there wasn't. So was social maybe? So was it more a PR play for them before, and then they were trying to become more social, or would you say that social was still a factor, but it just didn't have a strategy?
I think that social was an output for the messages that the brand wanted to deliver, which is the same in pretty much every business I have worked at or speak to, and all of my friends, not all of, most of my friends work in social, and that still is how the companies run. And I think that is because we haven't, as this generation, I guess, and of you included, like we started, quite early in social when it was new, because we were often the youngest in the team, in some sort of marketing team, or had, maybe we ran a fan account, or we ran our own blog or something, and then they were like, great, you know what to do, you just do this. And then we didn't have anyone to learn from, in terms of like the fundamentals of how to use social, because it was also new. But then we also lack the fundamentals of like what social should even be for, because until the last sort of year and a half, I don't think I could have answered that question properly. And I think that lots of, sorry, the dog is squeaking her toy, lots of people can't answer that question. And I think that this is an interesting place. This is where the tides are, I think, changing in social, and we need to decide, if we want to be taken more seriously, we need to really think about, okay, what actually is social doing for the business, and how can I, in my team that I lead or team that I'm a part of, actually drive something, instead of making content that can get views. Like I knew how to do that. I know how to make a really good piece of content. Was it laddering back to anything? Was it solving any problems? Absolutely not. And now that I'm out of that, I'm happy to talk about that. When I was in it, I didn't even realize.
That's mad. Do you know, like the parallel here is amazing. So my first big job in social was 2011, and I got it at a place called Jam at the Engine Group. They just bought Jam. It was like a startup social media agency, and it was a contract for like 3 months, going into Christmas, just covering Renault, News of the World, and I can't remember the other one. It was a fashion brand. And literally, it was like the it crowd, because they'd put us in the basement because they had no other room in their massive building for us. And we were not like sat next to each other. We were just sat like randomly because there was just no space. And it was literally like, okay, you just need to come up with content ideas and post them. Like that was it. And I thought, okay, this is less structured than this is less structured than when I was doing it at uni for like bars and clubs. Like this, like at least there I was like, okay, we're gonna look at like 3 months ahead. We're gonna see like the events we've got coming up. With this, it was more like, okay, if people are talking about something to do with the cars, we need to come up with some post ideas. Go. And it just seems really interesting that like even from then to then, some brands just didn't have an idea of like the way social could. And it's funny because I have a lot of friends who are influencers. They have their own following, and you talk to them, and most of the ones that have a reasonable sized audience, they have a plan. And if they have a plan, surely you'd think Deliveroo or Renault would have a plan.
Yeah, and I think people do have plans, but they don't have strategies. They have content pillars, but they're not solving business
Yeah.
problems. They're just making content to broadcast what the business wants to say, and often trying to do everything, which ends up meaning you do absolutely fuck all.
No, I completely understand that there is a massive difference between strategy and just having pillars that you can talk about. And so, well, let's talk about it. So they didn't necessarily have a strategy, but like when we first started working together, I was freelancing for Cooler, and we kind of saw each other through that. What was it like going from like kind of working just in-house to like working with an agency and in-house? How did that like change the dynamic?
Interesting. So obviously, because I was the one execution person, I wasn't going to be able to go out. Also, we couldn't even go outside. So
Yeah.
I was kind of stuck with what I could do. But the amount of content that we were putting out across all different channels, there was just no way that it was one person was going to be able to do that. Especially, I say my friends always laughed about the amount I was in. I'd normally have about an hour outside of meetings, or 2 hours per day. And that's just a separate. And again, that's something we go into businesses and we see the execution team are just spending all day making decks and in meetings. But so I came in and there was already an agency there. Then Cooler came on. Then we had two more agencies. So I was working at one point with 4 agencies just for social and influencer, which definitely was not a good way to go.
No.
But again, I think I really thought lots of my friends were still in small businesses. Nobody worked in this like I don't know, corporate, but like a big brand. And I just thought this just must be the way that it
Mm.
works, because there was also agencies for PR and corporate comms and all of these things too. So it was like, okay, this must be how it goes. So I kind of just cracked on with it,
Mm-hmm.
really. I loved working with Kula. I think I really had a really great relationship, and still do, with Liv, who started off like I started off, 5 years ago, and I was the social media manager, and she was like the like Deliveroo's account person, and
Yeah,
now
yeah,
she's
yeah.
the MD of the agency, and now I have
Yeah.
my own consultancy. Like it's really cool to see the process. And I think often me and Liv joke, I spoke to her more than I spoke to like the internal Deliveroo people, just because of so much content was coming from Cooler,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of the things that were falling to me, I was just then asking them for help with, because I just couldn't do all of this stuff myself with the capabilities that I had of like just being one person.
So it went from you doing everything to you doing everything via 4 agencies.
Yeah, yeah, it was yeah, it was interesting. And it went on such a journey as well, that by the time I'd left, there was then 5 people doing the role that me and my boss was doing. So it went through a huge change, and I think that change, I honestly believe that change only really came where like the whole time I had been very vocal about this is too much for one person to do, and I'd
Mm.
done all of the how do you manage a week, how do you do, like I'd done all that multiple
Mm.
times, and I was like, I actually don't think that I'm managing time badly.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot, I'm working late, I'm starting early,
Mm.
I don't think it's my time issue. I think it's just there's too many things for one person to be able to manage. And I think that really then finally, I think, hit home when these discussions have been going on for ages. But then I was off work for I can't remember how long, to be honest. After my dad died, they were really brilliant and were like, take as long as you need. And I came back, and there were then going to be five roles, and I was like, I mean, awful. But in my mind, and maybe there were things going on behind the scenes
Mm-hmm.
already,
Mm-hmm.
but in my mind, it was like, oh, she's gone, and there's this big old hole.
Mm.
Uh, we need to resource this
Yep.
properly. And I think I've seen that time and time again with other people who have gone off because of potential burnout or things going on, that they've taken this time off, like a larger piece of time off, not just a week holiday.
Mm.
And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, yeah. We need more we need more help in this area.
Friends of mine who started around when I started, it was the same thing. Like you were a one-person department. I mean, and like I reckon like 4 or 5 years in, I started to see that like I was joining a team rather than like them saying you are coming in. Here is an account. You do that, and it's one of those things where it's quite an interesting shift where people have gone, oh, okay, yeah, actually thinking about it in real life, like not social wise, we would have like 5 people doing the customer service, and we would have like 5 people working on like the underground ad campaign. We wouldn't have one person doing both of those things, and it seems really odd that those things would, and even that you would have to justify like the anywhere else in any other type of marketing that is not one role.
Yeah, and I think it's got even more confused now with the since the, I guess, what do we call it, like the TikTokification of
Mm.
everything now being short form content. Like, remember years ago, we were just taking imagery that a photographer had taken, or that we were taking ourselves, and then that was working. And now the intricacies of social media managers needed to be content creators and copywriters and editors and
Mm.
influencer managers, and all of these roles in one, whilst also remembering to like schedule all of their content and check that they haven't spelt all these words wrong for, all the everything
Yeah,
just
yeah,
takes
yeah.
so much time. And the pressures, I think, because everyone can see your work, I think it's
Mm.
one of the only roles, unless, not saying we're the same as bloody actors. But
Yeah, no.
if you're going to watch like people talk about it, don't they? About like West End shows, and people don't like to film them because they're like they call it like bootleg or something, bootstrap. I can't remember the right
I don't know
phrase,
that one.
but you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
supposed to film it because like I don't know the reason, but I see people talking about, we can't always hit every single note. Like it's an experience and it's the real thing. And I sort of see some similarities with social of your work is constantly looked at, especially by people in the business. No normal person is looking at every single Deliveroo post, like one or any brand post, one after each other, and looking at the feed and like looking, does
Yeah.
this look nice? Like that's just not how it works. But I think that I've lost my train of thought there. Oh, this really happens when I ramble all the
No,
time.
no, no. I don't know if I ever told you. So I used to do stand up comedy, and I did it for like
Yes.
12, 13 years, and like pretty much until the pandemic. And the amount of people I've spoken to, and there's a load of people now from comedy because basically when they say we want something more engaging, they mean funny. That's 99%
Yeah,
of the time. So a lot of people I know who used to write jokes or used to perform now have moved into this space, which is really fun as like a crossover for me. But like I find it really fascinating that like so if you talk about acting, like the amount of crossover there is between stand up and content, like because and stand up has largely become a content industry, and it should have become that sooner. But you get up on stage and immediately the crowd, the audience, the community there will let you know if it's what they wanted from you, and for better or for worse. And I find it really fascinating that like and like I think when you were talking about people don't go and look at the feed, like I would make the equivalency to like Edinburgh Fringe, like the amount of friends of mine who have texted me during a Fringe run and said my ex's poster is everywhere. Like she is being pushed like to be this big person. I can't walk anywhere without seeing how well she's doing. Like and I'm just sitting there going, what do you want me to do? Like I can't go and take down those posters. Like it's like mad. And it's the same thing where it's like there's no other. Like I feel like they're the two spaces where like you just get infinitely judged and infinitely like seen, and but equally like it can work to your advantage. So like I was going to ask, like when you were at Roo, like was there like did you look at competition? Did you look at Just Eat? Did you look at like individual brands, or like was it a case of okay, we're going to kind of just stay in our, because I know like there are brands that are like okay, we know we have competition, but really we just want to like stay in our own lane and kind of not get distracted by the noise.
I think this is what I see all the time is everyone is so obsessed with their direct competitors, but on social, every piece of content is a competitor. So you are trying to get the screen time that it doesn't matter whether it's a content creator or your next door neighbor or a brand, like everybody's competing for those eyeballs. It's not like I am just, when I was there, for example, it was just us and Just Eat competing. Like that's just not how social works. So I have never really cared too much about what brands do on social, and all of my inspiration has always come from what creators do, because I've always said creators know the platform better than anybody who works in social, better than anybody who works at a brand platform. And after working at a platform, I can very confidently say that. And and at the end of the day, what I've always thought is if we work in social, we put out content and it doesn't do very well, whatever your measurement of well is, and that happens continuously. Often not too much happens and you still keep your job. If you are a creator, that cannot happen because you lose your brand deals and then you have to stop and do something else. So creators are always at the forefront of understanding the platforms and seeing new trends. And that is why I think also to be the best, quote unquote, to be great at social and to really understand the nuances, being a content creator really bloody helps. And I know people hate it when I say that.
No, no, no. Some of my early social media contracts were got because I was on Twitter at the time, because I was just posting out funny jokes and people were following me and then going, "This guy can write stuff. Should we get him in to do stuff for the?" And that was it. That was like how I got work, and I wrote a book about it for the Guardian. And like it was, I know, it was quite funny. They contacted me and just went, "Would you like to write some articles?" And I went, "Yeah, fine." And then eventually they were like, "Do you think there's a book in this?" And I went, "Yes, I've written a book." I said, "Yes, I've written a book," and I hadn't written a book. And so I went away and wrote the outline of a book, and they were like, we'd like to see this. And I was like, shit. So then I had to go and write a book
Oh
and
my
I got it published. I
God, I didn't
know.
know that.
I
What's it
know.
called? Do a plug.
Uh, it's called How to Get a Job Using Twitter.
Love.
And it's way out of it's even called X now. So like it's I still stand by a lot of the stuff in it. In it, I remember the same thing you were saying. I was saying like brands want to be people and people want to be brands, and that's never been more true. Like I feel like as we went into like a video world, like sort of during the pandemic, like pre that, you could kind of give like a Twitter account or whatever. Like you can get a copywriter in to do the tone of voice, and you don't know that you've swapped someone out, but like if you're doing video, and like you have that relationship with that like face or creator or whatever it would be. And brands, I think that's a real struggle for them because a lot of brands don't have like a mascot or a thing that they can like latch onto, and so they're trying to bring in creators, but then they only they have to keep paying them, or they bring in certain sort of people for like a certain period of time, and it doesn't quite it builds it up for a bit, but then they go, well, they're only going to be here for like a brand deal for 2 or 3 things, and then they're gone. And so I think the most interesting ones are people who are using TikTok for like getting their staff to be the stars. So like like the Waitroses and that kind of company, and companies that have like thought outside the box and gone, okay, like I don't know, Deliveroo, like we not Deliveroo, Duolingo, like we're going to make our mascot a physical being that can like run around and do that sort of thing. I forgot where I was going to go with that because I had some more questions on Deliveroo. But should we talk about TikTok? Because I feel like we're edging into TikTok.
Yes.
So you went from Deliveroo to your next favourite job, equally as important. It was not that it was just in this order. You went to TikTok.
Yeah.
So you went from in-house to in-brand, like in-platform.
Platform. Yeah.
How was that? That must have been like I've gone into offices like for like Facebook and Meta and those kind of places before, but to work in it, that must have been crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Although, like with everything, it always looks cooler on the outside. When you're in it, you're still in a corporate business.
Yeah.
Burst anyone's bubble. And when I went there, so when I originally interviewed in 2020, or maybe it was even 2019, going into 2020, they were a little office in a WeWork. They just had some room in, I can't even remember where in London it was because I was newer to London then. And then when I got the role, we were in the Strand in oh yeah, you can say where it is, can't I? In like the 180, in like the Soho House
I
place.
don't think they're there anymore. I think they've moved.
No, they are. So there's still
Oh.
teams there, and then we upgraded to the big Kaleidoscope office in Farringdon, and that was sick. I was like, this is like such a cool office, and just lots of things that I don't know, like I've seen in films when I was young, which I'm from like this small town in South Wales, like nobody goes and works in big tech brands and all of these things. So I've just seen it in films where there's like ping pong tables and free food and fridges that you can just help yourself to. So immediately I was just like, this is absolutely sick. Like in a good way.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, so that was interesting. And when I joined, they were building out the live team, so I was part of the TikTok live team in Europe. And when I started, I always forget the number, whether it was like 7 or 11 of us, and then when I left there was over 130 of us, and I was only there for I think 2.5 years, 2.5 years maybe. So this part of TikTok grew exponentially in the time that I was there, so that was really interesting again. And I think very similar to how I'd worked in these startups before. We were like a startup inside this big company, where we had the freedom to trial. I really remember just feeling very free to have an idea. And my boss, a guy called Sammy, who's worked in tech forever, really great boss, just really like just was like, yeah, why don't you try that? Go on then. I'd think, oh, I've got an idea, but then, it might not turn into anything. But he really championed, I think, people who wanted to do things. And I definitely had lots of ideas. So it was a really fun place to work. The team was brilliant. I really enjoyed the people that I worked with. the work was interesting. It was so different to anything I'd really done before, because I wasn't, like a social media manager there. I was working on campaigns and content that creators could get involved in. And obviously I'd worked with influencers previously at Deliveroo, but the type of creators that go live on TikTok are
Mm.
very different to if I asked you to think of a creator.
Yeah.
They're very, very different. And these creators on TikTok, when people use this word community, like
Mm.
these people would go live on TikTok sometimes for like 12 hours a day, and they would know the people they were actually
Mm.
talking to insanely well, and vice versa as well. I mean, I'm sure the audience
Mm.
knew even more about them, of course, because they were just talking all day. But I think it was a really great place for creators to find some belonging almost. And it's hard to do that, I think, online, unless you're going to be this big content creator. And we know it's so hard to create content that scroll thumb stopping and scroll, all those buzzwords. It's so hard to compete there. Whereas TikTok Live was like this new space. It was kind of similar to Twitch, except not as much gaming.
Do you know what I find really fascinating about, like, there's an obsession, I think, in marketing of like scroll stopping. It's got to be scroll stopping. Everyone's got to stop scroll. A lot of the accounts that I watch at the moment are going the other way. They're not like, got to be Mr. B, like in your face immediately. And I know that works, that's great. But like, I like the accounts that are like, hi, let's talk about this today. Or, like they just seem down to earth, and there's like this like authenticity about them. Because I don't know, maybe I've gone full circle and I want to go back to like old school YouTube where you would just talk to a camera and maybe someone would watch it. But like I find that this weird like hyper, you have to assume your audience has no attention span is hopefully going. And I feel like streamers are the ones that are kind of going to capitalize on that, because if you can do 12 hours and someone's going to like put you on in the background at work, or they're going to watch you for an hour or whatever it would be, like that's a real dedicated like fan that, like, even if you're watching, I was talking to someone about retention rates the other day, and they were saying about their YouTube video, and it was like a 6-minute video or something, and I was like, you're trying to get someone to watch like 50% of your 6-minute video. Imagine trying to entertain people for, let's say, 12 hours solidly.
Yeah.
And keep them there. That's like a whole nother level of content.
Yeah, and I think one of the creators that like has now shot to fame, like literal fame levels, is I don't know if you know him, DJ AG. So he is he started on TikTok Live, and he was one of our like I don't know if he was like a rising star, but he was someone that we all paid attention to, because he wasn't just sat talking in his house like most people. He was out on the street with this like DJ set, and he was playing songs, and he was talking to his audience. He was always in certain places in London with the tube behind. So as soon as you were scrolling, you knew it was him, because not only was he like this distinct asset and this brand, also his surroundings were different to everyone else, to everywhere else. And he has now gone from having, nobody be there to watch, just people tune in live, to hosting um, Will Smith, all these. Honestly, I can't even think off the top of my head. All of these insane singers are now wanting to go into central London. He goes outside King's Cross, and they pull in huge audiences. Like Naomi Campbell was there really randomly. All of these huge pop stars are now, instead of just thinking, I want to go on these shows, I want to go and perform outside King's Cross with DJ AJ, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Amazing. And he really has found something different. And everything he wanted to do was about giving a voice to local artists. So he'd go into these parts of London, and I don't know anything about the wording. I think it's called like a dub track or something. I might be totally wrong. But you would just go, I don't know how it works, how you sign up, but you just turn up, and you'd be able to rap or sing or do whatever you wanted on camera. So he was giving this audience to all of these people. And as this has grown, he now still, works with these huge mega stars, but he also still has local people come and be part of his content too. And I just think having your purpose and that still coming through even when you grow to that level is amazing, and it's so easy to forget that, I think. And I guess it's the same with brands as well. Always chasing that next thing instead of finding something and then staying true to that and just looking at different ways to make that happen online, rather than always trying to, let's go over here, let's try this, let's do this. And that comes back to that strategy piece as well, of like knowing why you are on social in the first place. What are you trying to do? And then all the rest are just the tactics that you can try. But this one thing here should stay the same.
Yeah, and it's the same when you get like offered like a brand deal or whatever. Like if you know your why, you immediately know, okay, I won't work with you because it just doesn't work and it's not the audience I want to build and it doesn't fit in. Talking about the streaming, the streaming element that you were working on. So let's be honest, all platforms just want to keep you on for the longest period of time because whether they are or not, they see every other platform as a competitor because you only have 24 hours in a day, right? That's just life. So aside from keeping people on the platform for longer because there's 12-hour streams, why was TikTok focusing on that when, let's be honest, at the time, because it's like 2022, right? Like this is like peak. Other platforms are copying them because everyone thinks short form video is the thing they need to now copy instead of just focusing on what they do best. Sorry, I'm thinking of meta now. But like, why would they be focusing so much on live stream?
I'm pretty sure it's sort of public knowledge about so there's a huge amount of revenue tied to this. So this is different to TikTok Shop. Sometimes people see live and think it's TikTok Shop. This is like, if you go on TikTok and you open the gift panel, so this is very similar to Twitch where you can gift stream as things. They're like virtual gifts that are like animations that play on screen or something like you can put a hat on someone, you might have seen some of the content. So that's a way of you giving back to the creator. So instead of sort of them getting all their revenue from brand deals, they also their fans sort of not pay them, because we were also never allowed to say that, but their fans would send gifts to show their appreciation. So the same way, and we were always told how when you see a busker, like there's a hat there and you can throw something in if you want to be like, that was brilliant. Like people know that there's no ads on live, so it's not like, you know, when you scroll through TikTok, every few things, or I don't know, however many, there's an ad and you understand that, okay, we see the ads because that's how the platform's being funded. Whereas on live, you're just there to watch that content ad-free. So it was a really big revenue driver for the business. So that is why I think there was so much focus on that.
So TikTok would get like a cut of every gift that someone sends to the creator kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I obviously know, but I can't remember. But just, I'm sure you can Google it and find everything that you need to.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We'll move on. I get you're being coy. No, I understand that there's. I mean, as I say, it's a business side of things anyway to keep people on a platform. It just seemed really interesting that like they wouldn't have doubled down on short form video, but then I guess it's really hard to, and I see them struggling with it now, where you know sometimes you'll be watching a video in the top corner on TikTok, it'll be like ad starting in 3, 2, and I go, I'm just going to skip as it hits 1 because I know that'll skip the ad because I don't want the ad. And I think we're in a weird space with ads where like and I even saw the other day that like Meta and Instagram, so Facebook and Instagram around Meta are like going to charge like or offer you an ad-free experience, like if you pay like a monthly subscription. So I think we're in a weird place where there's legislation coming in for data and like for our rights for our own data, and so they're having to like pivot their model so that like ads is not the only thing. But I know that like people are a bit like, well, why should I have to pay for a free service? I'll pay the creator, but I don't want to pay the platform. And I think you kind of need to remember that the distribution model needs to exist in order for you to get to that creator, because otherwise you wouldn't have known they existed anyway.
Yes, I think that will be quite an interesting thing to play out, and don't know how that will all work. I guess lots of people on YouTube though go ad free and pay to have no ads, and it's become much more normalized now. I don't know what other benefits you actually get if it's just no ads.
I know, because someone told me yesterday you can also listen to music, but your phone, you don't have to watch it, your phone can be locked, so it's kind of like that. And I was like, that's fine, but I can't really make a playlist, so unless I like have to make like a whole huge list of, and I don't really want to do that.
But that's good because I watch lots of podcasts on YouTube, so then if I could close, Okay, maybe I will sign up after this. Do you have an affiliate link?
I don't have an affiliate. I don't even think they do affiliates, but now they flipping should. And also I think you can download. Sorry, I'm not selling this to you. But I think you can download videos as well. So like if you're going on a plane or something, you can like have the video offline and stuff. But this is the problem I have with that. Same problem I have with TikTok with that is you can watch the videos, but they never load the comments. And I get that that's trickier because comments might be more real time. But couldn't they like cache some? Because the main thing for me when I'm watching like a video sometimes is I want to read the comments, or I want to like get involved in the community and at least kind of see what the vibe is from people about the video, and that kind of gets on my.
You want to see if anyone's funnier than you or making the gap.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I'm doing a contract at the moment where I've been basically the job is to be funny in the comments for a brand, and it's so much fun. Like I'm under an NDA, so I can't say on this one right now what it is, but it's like a dream job. It's just find something and be funny.
No, I think it's so interesting as well what you said earlier about the comedians, because I know you said you had John on and Rich Monzo, like also I don't know if he still does it, and you. I always think of you three like similarly in that, like coming from that background and then working in social. So it's it makes sense, like you said earlier. Lots of people's automatic is entertainment is being funny. So having those people to be there to write or come up with those ideas makes a lot of sense.
We'll get back to the podcast in just a second, but if you're enjoying the show, please take a second to subscribe and review it on iTunes or Spotify. Also, if you think this episode would help a friend, a small business, a co-worker, please pass the pod on to just one person. It helps more than you'll ever know. Thank you so much for your support. Let's get back into the episode. I did an Edinburgh Fringe show this year. It was a compilation show. And I might leave it in. 2 years ago, my partner basically, we were in bed and she just said, why aren't you filming the shows? And I went, well, because you don't film the shows, you just do a show. And then she was like, yeah, but like the show is made, like it's clippable. Like the show is brilliantly clippable. And I was like, and then she talked me through like what she would want to see from the show in terms of clips. And I was like, do you know what? I've spent so long in my life keeping comedy, and even though like I get loads of contracts for being funny, I keep so long keeping them apart that now I hadn't put together. And this year, so we had 1.6 million views on the clips over 12 months leading up. That was on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We sold out the 80-seater for the entire 25 days on content. And it's like why was I not doing it before? It doesn't make any sense. And so we're going to a bigger room next year and we're hoping to double down on the content and stuff. But it's just until someone external told me you have skill sets here that can be used for 3 different things. Yeah. Why are you not using them? I just hadn't put the piece together. And I feel like an idiot, but sometimes you just don't, you need someone else, you know?
Yeah. Also, so it's just one of those extra things to think about when you're there thinking, I'm here to do the best comedy I can for this set amount of time. I can't imagine that you'd want to be thinking, right, I need to, whether it's even just get someone to come and set up it's just extra things for you to think about when you're just like, I just need to nail this show. So yeah. I can totally see why that happens. And I think we're like me, Michael and Chris, so we all work together at Slice, and we're always like, oh yeah, we should make content. And then we're just so busy executing for the partners and the clients that we have, that it just gets pushed down the list. So yeah, I feel
Well, I've got my friend Sarah coming on. She used to, well, she runs I edit it. She runs the Let's Grow Girl podcast, and she also was the head of social at a law firm, which I think is really going to be really interesting to talk about. Ooh. I know, and she moved on somewhere else, so now she can talk about loads of stuff. Subscribe for that. But we were talking about this, and what was I going to say? I was too busy plugging the. Oh, that was it. I was saying that she of the 2 hosts in that podcast, she will be openly say that she struggles to maintain her social media because she works in social. But the other person doesn't work in social and so has a much larger following on Instagram because they will take the time to curate the feed and do all that stuff. So I feel like what you have to, and it comes down to not having one person run a team. So the way that I've managed to make the Fringe thing work is my friend Steph, they do the MCing, they run the show, I do the booking, I do the production, I do the copy, I do all the social media for it. So I basically fill the room, get them in, they do the show, and then they bounce people over to their fringe show, and they told me that half their audience every day were from that show because they loved the show and they were like doing that sort of thing. So it was like a trickle down effect that was just so lovely community wise to like have, and the amount of performers who were like, I came and did the show. It's the game Two Truths One Lie. Basically, we're playing Two Truths One Lie live with 3 comedians. It's just like that, and the amount of comedians who were like, people came because they saw a clip later on, or they watched this and I was like, none of that's in the show, and they didn't have to like worry they were going to see the same 10 minutes again. And so I feel like, again, it comes down to like having like a strategy around like how does it benefit everyone, and how does it like what's your end goal that has like made that the difference. And yeah, I was on a couple of them, but the majority, like you said, I think I'd separated the tasks into important and not urgent, and important. And important is like the show happens. But important, not urgent is filming a show. Like that doesn't have to happen. Like, but it does now, because if it doesn't happen, it doesn't get anyone in the room, and then it's not worth doing. You know?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, you're really making me think about, all right, I need to up my game now.
No. Oh, don't say that. You're brilliant. Why do you think I've invited you on? Let's talk about TikTok. Let's go granular on TikTok for a sec. So, what was like a campaign that you stood out to you at your time there that just did brilliantly that you weren't expecting?
I actually can't think of
I
something.
expected all of them to go well.
Yeah, no, it's so annoying because you don't want to be like, yeah, everything did really well. But because we hit that time where it was just growing so quickly, I think, not taking away from anyone in the team or myself, but I think whatever we had done, it would have probably done well, because
Right.
that was the wave that we were riding. So yeah, there's nothing that springs to mind that was like a crazy campaign that was very different to that really outperformed everything else.
Okay, then let's different tack. Was there any lessons that you learned by being in platform at TikTok that changed your mind about how the algorithm works and maybe informed your own personal accounts?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about how it all really worked. You know, we talk about like the algorithm and all of this stuff. Uh, and then people saying, you know, the algorithm, but I say it quite a lot. It's like a Mr. Beast quote that I heard once. It's like, replace the word algorithm with audience. Like the algorithm doesn't hate you, your audience does, which is obviously a bit harsh. But the basis of that is true. But then when I worked at TikTok, I realized that, and we see it now with search, but I think at the time people weren't really talking about that as much, but that every piece of content that you create and your profile is categorized into what TikTok thinks it's about. So if you are continuously making cooking content, for example, I don't know, and then just one day you're like, do you know what, I'm just going to talk about my life instead, your content will still probably be shown. Sorry, the dog is yawning. The content will still probably be shown to cooking, like people who want to watch cooking content, but then they'll see that content and think, why the fuck am I being shown that? I don't care about that. I don't even recognize you because all I know is recipes. So realizing that not just content was being categorized with the keywords, what you say, the text that's on screen, I said what you say, the location, that helps it say like, this is a video for 30-year-old women who are single, and like, I'm going to show it to these, but that your whole profile is also subcategorized, which I don't know if it still is, but that was how it worked. And then I don't know how that works with like, if we think your profile is about food, but this piece of content is about being 30 and being single, I'm not sure how they then mash those audiences together, or which gets priority of where it shows. I'd imagine it's per piece of content, but I just wonder about this overarching grouping that you've been put in, and if that is taken into account anywhere.
That's really interesting. How long does it take? And I mean, obviously it's an algorithm, so it's going to be like flexible, but I assume it won't judge you from your first video. Like, how long does it take for it to categorize you?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long that takes. But I also remember that there weren't loads of groupings, because
Right.
I remember seeing it. I actually probably wasn't supposed to see this, because it was nothing to do with my team. But I remember seeing it and thinking, so at the time, me and Molly were making like dating content about love and comedy. And there wasn't any of those tags it was more general. And I remember thinking, oh, well, they're not going to know who to show this to because we don't really fall into any of these categories. But now I think I'd imagine it's changed more to the pieces of content. And I know that, you post a piece of content and normally after about 30 minutes, that part at the top that says find related content will hopefully say what you want it to say. If it still says find related content, TikTok has no idea what your content is about, and you need to go in and tweak your caption to make sure it then knows how to do that. And you can do that up to 7 times in a week. So that's really helpful, I think, for people. Sorry, this is so like executional and tactical, but
It's perfect.
that's oh, great.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's super helpful. I think we teach brands about that as well. Of ideally, of course, you're not going to want to go in and edit your captions, but it's a good way of you learning about what the algorithm, how your content gets shown to people and what it thinks your content's about. People always say a hashtag's important, and I'm like, I don't know, test it. If you test a piece of content and you include a hashtag that says, Buckingham Palace, and then you remove that hashtag, and then Buckingham Palace is no longer part of your search term at the top, then yes, it's but I think just the way we use hashtags has changed, hasn't it? Like we used to, this is so back in the day, like search with hashtags. We don't do that anymore. I don't think. I don't know anyone who does that. The behavior has changed, but we know that the platforms pick up keywords, and just because it's a hashtag, it's still a word there. So for that reason, I think they probably have some sway, but not because they're a hashtag, just because they're a word.
No, I totally get that. I when you were saying that, I was thinking like, oh yeah, so they go in the path of like Netflix and having like uber specific categories of like people, and just like putting like there's only like one person in like dating rom-com in the 70s like on Tinder or something mad. No, because it's. I wish they would show us like what category we're in, and like maybe allow us to like say a different category, because, and I know they'll never do that because it's like too open to abuse and stuff, but it's quite fun because if you want to do something different, like if you want to talk about something else, which inevitably you will, like everyone wants to kind of branch out a little bit or just try something a bit different or whatever, you sort of do worry that like that content is going to be shown to, let's say, like 30 something single women who, like, I worry about that. Whereas I don't, and like, but you kind of want to be able to say this is where but also they've limited it. I think they've taken the hashtags and you can only do 5 now. So that alone should tell you that it's not as important, or it's very important to be very specific.
I think it's with everything. If you want your content to be shown to a certain person, like you need to create the content. You need to basically tell whoever the platform is through what you're saying, the text. And it's so easy to see now as well, because if you go into the back end and you look at where the views came from, and you look at search, it literally shows you the search terms that have pulled your content through, and whether that's like related to it. I find this really interesting as well, to see if people are actually searching for you, or if your content has just been shown. So often when me and Molly would look at ours, we would see, and the name of our channel has changed now, it's Molly and Beth, but it used to be 2 girls 1 pup, not pup. And the search terms would often be different variations of that, like people not really remembering the name, but like writing the number 2 or writing TWO. So that was cool to see people are actually searching for our content rather than it just coming up in people's FYPs. But as well as that, you can also see, when we talk about red flags in dating or best date spots in London, that people are finding our content because they are looking for that content too.
No, totally. Well, let's talk about your account. So when did you start the account? Why did you start the account? And what was the logic?
Yeah, so started the account in 2022. And Molly, I'm sure she won't mind me saying, had been basically painfully single for her whole life. And I had been the opposite of bouncing around different boyfriends. And I met Molly because I had been with someone for a long time and found out he'd been cheating on me for years. So it was very like dramatic. I thought we were going to move in, like buy a house. We already lived together.
Yeah.
And then I was 30. Literally, it was like 4 months after my dad died, and I found out, and I was just like, "What the fuck is going on? Like, this is mental." So at 30, which now I'm like, that was the best thing ever, but moved back into a house share, which I thought I will behind me those days, and moved in with Molly and another girl called Emma, and yeah, so I was dating. All my friends, or most of my friends, were in relationships, as were Molly's. Lots of my mates actually married with 2 kids, and I'm now
Show offs.
and, and I'm now back in a house share, single. So I was just like, God's sake. I didn't have anyone to talk to really. Like the only reason my mates, I think, would ask me was because it was like funny stories, which obviously I then played up as well, and one of was like part of the joke. I was like, this is such like a taboo subject of how hard it is to date. And I think it was a really interesting place of how dating apps were. It was after COVID when people were going back, like we were all out again, but we didn't like going out because we'd just been inside for so long. We didn't want to have conversations with new people. So it was really a place for us to just talk about our lived experiences on there, and share the conversations that we were having together. And very quickly, I think our first video hit like 100,000 views. Like that, we woke up the next day and we're like, "Oh my god, this is so cool." Which was good as well, because we knew the topic was interesting. We knew we wanted to share our real experiences, which then we realized how much of our lives do we want to put on the internet. Also, it's very like personal when you're dating people, talking about your friends' relationship. It's all just a bit murky, isn't it?
Yeah.
But not many people were doing it, and that's why we saw, I think, quite early success. But also, Molly had always worked in PR. She now works in like PR, social, and influencer. And I'd always worked. Sorry, can you hear her playing with the
I
dog?
can, but I don't mind.
Ruby.
Anyone's got a problem with the dog, they've got a problem with me.
I just turned around. She's got this fake pizza in her mouth, like.
Oh. She's ordered a Deliveroo. Look at her. Having a great time.
Yeah, she just wants to help. Sorry, just one second. Ruby, stop. Sorry, that's so loud.
That's all right.
Okay, let me just finish my trail of thought there. Oh yeah, so I worked in social and influencer, but we hadn't, even though I'd made content on and off since I was like 18 on different channels, this was my first time really like going for it. So we were very, very glad that it started off and did quite well.
Okay, so I have several questions. So the first thing is, I was talking to a friend of mine recently who wants to start. They do a faceless channel, and they were like, I want to start one where I show my face, and they're nervous. And my only advice there was, okay, 2 things. The thing you're worried about sharing makes you interesting. Share it, but have boundaries. And so I was really glad when you said, you were like, we need to know how much we're going to share here, because unfortunately there are some people who haven't thought about that, and then they would just overshare. And they don't know when to stop, or when the relationship with their audience needs to kind of have that level. So I loved that you said that. My second question was going to be, how did you get your first 1,000 followers? Like, what was that like? It happened not like over. Well, maybe it did happen overnight, but like, how long did that take for you?
I think we really didn't think about our boundaries at the start, and our original concept was get ready with me for a date and then review the date with me like the next day. So people were really invested, because nobody else was really doing that at the time, because like people don't want you talking about them, even though we didn't tell anybody who they were, and no one would ever be able to work out who these people were. I think that especially with Molly, some of the guys that she was dating found out and weren't very nice about it, which I mean, they were quite like mean, which I thought was a bit much. But so we worked out as we went along like what we should share, and often we did. If something was my story or a friend of mine's story, I would tell Molly, and Molly would tell the story, so that my friends wouldn't be like, "Wait, that sounds like me and my husband."
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? That there's just lots of people who are the same." So that was the boundaries that we learned as we sort of went along. and then the second part, what was the question? I know, I think we actually had 1,000 followers probably in the first day,
Wow.
because we did, and then we sort of fell off it. But when we're starting again with like what we want to do on there, and it was like our first video was this story about us and that we're newly moved in together, we're just starting navigating and we're going to take you along on this journey. So as an audience, fucking hell, sorry, word terms, as like a normal person watching this content, if you're like, that sounds like me, or that's like my mate, yeah, I want to see all these dates, because I know it's going to be shit and it's going to be funny and then it's going to be crap and then hopefully you'll find love. And you know,
Yeah.
we brought them on this story arc, and I think, unfortunately, also fortunately, my first date, get ready with me, ended up being my now boyfriend. So that was quite short lived, actually.
Selfish of him, ruining the channel at the start.
I know, it could have gone on to be a global success, you know.
Yeah.
So, and now Molly has a boyfriend as well that she lives with. So it's, yeah, yay. So we've talked about what we're going to do now, because we both still want to make content. We both love making content. It was obviously so much easier because we live together and we don't
Yeah.
anymore. But I think we've now found something that we both think will work and is interesting, and is still us sharing what we want to share as well as what we think people want to hear.
I don't know if you can debunk this. I heard a TikTok rumor, so maybe you might have heard if it's true. I heard that in your first like X number of uploads, let's say your first 5 uploads, TikTok will make you go viral. Like they'll push it out to those people to give you like a endorphin boost to like keep you hooked on the platform. Have you heard that? Is that
I haven't heard that. No, and I've never seen anyone at TikTok talking about that. I don't know how that would work, but who knows? They can do anything and everything.
No, totally. No, it makes sense when you think it, but then I go, but yeah, like you said, like, so what? They just make a crap video, like a new person with a maybe like camera crap video go viral to keep them on it. Why would that? I
Yeah.
didn't know if there was anything you could give to
No,
something.
and I think, like you said earlier, like all the platforms want to keep people on there, so they only want to push out good content, like content that people want to watch. So I can't imagine if you started a channel today that it would. I just think they wouldn't even know where to push the content to either. So, and like with that content being really specific about knowing who you're trying to reach and making sure the content does that, that would be the best tactical way of doing that, I'd say.
Yeah, no, totally. What
Otherwise,
as
oh, sorry, I was going to say,
no.
we'll just start a new account every time we start getting some flop.
and in the account, just go follow that one. Go to the other account. I was going to say, putting your creator hat on as a creator, what do you think's like the most misunderstood thing that brands do when they're creating content for TikTok?
Talking about what they want to say, and still being like this broadcast of here's all the messages that we need to deliver, and still, you know, that everyone's getting better at that and trying to make it more social, but often these aren't messages that should live on social. These are messages that should live in another part of another marketing funnel. I don't know what that is. That's not a funnel.
That's
It's a funnel.
funnel. It's a tube. Funnel tube.
Yeah, that would probably be it. And then the thing they do when they work with creators is give these insane briefs with 25 key messages to deliver in the first 10 seconds, which are shocking, and it's just such a waste of money for brands, and we just see so much money being wasted on influencer, but also, you know, just on working with agencies to just churn out content that does nothing, that ladders back to nothing, and nobody's asking those questions. And I think that's why we saw this gap for Slice to start, because we're like, okay, this is how it's been done. And I think the opposites of Michael, who at Ryanair realized earlier on we need a actual strategy, and theirs was around changing perceptions of millennial audiences on what you get when you get a Ryanair flight. And their tactics of doing that was, you know, taking the piss out of people who expected first class service for the price of a meal deal. I think that's his line he likes to use.
No,
Um,
totally.
so, they realized that and they did that. Whereas me and the majority of brands still are not thinking like that. We are just thinking, how can we get lots of views and make content that people wants to watch? And so often the brand is fading less and less, more and more into the background, because we know people don't want to be sold to, they just want content, and we want to look like a creator. But then, and that's where I was. And then now I'm like, so what was the point of me? Like, what was the point of social media for this brand?
Yeah.
When even now, I mean, if you look at the lots of pinned content on some of the brands I used to work at, oh, this is a bit shady. No, not shady, but I think this is a good point, is that it's someone opening a fridge. Sorry if you worked on this. I don't think you work there anymore. But someone opening a fridge and there's loads of not M&Ms, the Easter, what's the Easter egg ones? The at Easter, the mini egg
Oh, mini eggs. Yeah, yeah.
in the salad drawer. And it's like, okay, viral piece of content, loads of views. You're doing more for mini eggs than you are for Deliveroo. What's the point of that content? And what does that ladder back to? Because to me, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't looked at it enough. But to me, that's doing a job for mini eggs, not for your brand. And I think lots of brands fall into, not that trap, but similar traps of building potentially the category that they're in rather than building their brand. And I think this is where we need to see a change. If we all as social media people want to be taken more seriously, and want to, we hear all the time, which I believe, like, heads of social or social managers will be the next CMOs. Not if we don't understand strategy, and not if we don't understand what we're doing for the business we want. So I think it's a bit of a pivotal time for everyone to be quite honest with ourselves of, like, yes, this is the way we've always done it. Maybe that doesn't mean it's the right way, and just having some time to reflect on what we've done and how we're going to move forward. And, some people I'm sure are doing a really great jobs in that space, but I know the majority aren't.
No, totally. I didn't work on that post. I don't. I'll look it up. But it's yeah, I know what you mean. And so let's talk about Slice really quickly. So it's your co-founded thing between you and Michael,
Yeah.
and its aim is to help brands and agencies find strategies for brands, essentially. So it's kind of you are dive bombed into, I wouldn't say the problem, but you're dive bombed into the situation, and you help them find a strategy that works for them for the short, medium, long term. Is that fair?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
Well done.
Okay.
He's
I get a job at pitching you. Well, to be honest, I'm half quoting you off that Media Cat podcast,
Yeah.
which was great,
So-
by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, so we come in and we help create social strategies. So a lot of what we do is based off brand strategy frameworks that we tweak to work for social. And one of the main things that I think I'd never thought about before was really, what are the problems in the business that social could be a solution to? And that could be, these things aren't super complicated. They should be simple, but there's lots of work that gets to getting this simple line of what we're going to do. And like I said about, Michael's example was around changing perceptions. Maybe it's finding new audiences. Maybe your audience, you spend lots of money on TV and older audiences know who you are, but actually when you ask younger audiences in your brand surveys, no one's got a clue who your brand is. So how can you reach them, and using social to do that? So so we create strategies for brands, but we also upskill their team. So we run a number of what we call quick starts, which, while we're working on the overarching strategy that takes a bit of time, we also have these sessions with the in-house teams. Sometimes if you have agencies, we also bring the agencies in, where we work with them too, to upskill everyone in different areas. So we talked a little bit about social search, so we have one on that. Michael's famous banger bank, something that he sort of created and termed when he was at Ryanair, and that's just around, you don't need to keep making content, you've got great content, how can you reuse that content? Around how you can resource and properly run a social team, how you can start measuring what actually matters and not just vanity metrics. So lots of different things, and we also look at the the actual social team and look at if they're fit for purpose. So I think we are because we're consultants and because we don't do any execution, we don't have any bias. So we can easily say, you don't need to make all of this content. We think you need to work with influencers, or you need to do more on paid. I mean, it's different for
Yeah.
everyone. But often what we find is agencies will always say you need to make more content because that's how they charge is by making content. So that's why we're quite different, because we don't do the execution. So we can be honest.
No, totally, and it's really refreshing to have that come in. Do you find that some places are a bit, I don't want to say cagey, but like if you're coming in and maybe judging the team or judging the work or judging maybe what they've pitched strategy wise, like do you ever find like a bit of a pullback from places to be like, who are you to come in and like, why would we pay you to come in and judge our work and maybe say we're rubbish? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we're never as harsh as saying things are rubbish. It's always constructive, and we. I don't think there's an easy way of saying it really, but we're brought in usually by the CMO who sees that they don't really understand or know what social's doing, and they don't know what they should be doing. They just know that it's important. And again, because social teams often don't know why they're doing what they're doing, we come in to help build those people. So if we come in and people are really good at making content or having ideas, or, all the million things that it could be when working in social, or just really keen to learn, that we can teach them everything that can be taught, and help upskill them. So in that role, they will be upskilled, and then wherever they go, they will have this base of knowledge, which they can keep growing as well. So we don't really see people be obviously. I think when you come in as a consultant, it sounds a bit scary, but everyone we've worked with seems to want to learn and make things better, because as soon as we go in and do our first session, that's called like the mic drop, that's about the state of social and then where we think you're going wrong as a brand, most of the time people are like, yeah, but we just don't know how to fix that. Like, we don't know what the other options are, and that's where we go away and then work on that strategy as well. So we bring people along on the journey with us, but sometimes they're not often, but sometimes people aren't right for roles. And normally the person in that role is very aware of that as well. And whether that's them moving internally to another part of the business that suits them and their skills and what they want to do much better, or people leaving and going to another brand where they are better aligned. But everything we're doing is to try and grow everything that we're doing, our mission is to get social media taken seriously by the C-suite, and that everything that we do ladders back to that. All of the choices that we have, all the difficult conversations that we have, all of the times that we do our keynotes and I go on stage and say, at Deliveroo, I actually didn't have a bloody clue what I was doing, even though I was on all these podcasts and I was, known a little bit in like a social media person. And I think all of these things is hard and like quite vulnerable, I guess, to do. But it's all because we really believe that social is this huge power for brands or for people, for everything. And we know that people in social are really struggling. And that is, we honestly believe, because there's no direction of that strategy. And that is what we are there to do.
No, completely. I completely understand that. I've worked in a lot of places where, yeah, sometimes you're putting out nice stuff, but you're thinking, what's this? Are we just doing it because we have promised to do 10 posts a month? Like, or is there an actual reason here? And like earlier in the pod, I was talking briefly about like how sometimes when you freelance, you just don't have something the next week, or it gets moved about. With the business model, it sounds like it's not like retainer led. So like you might get a brand for a year if you're making content for them. So do you have a similar, like you must have a similar situation to me, where you're kind of like, you go in, you sort the problem out, and then you have to find the next person. So like, how are you finding that business model versus say being in a job where you just know what you're doing, like, and you know where the money's coming from? And
I think it makes us be better if that makes sense. I'd imagine
Because you've got to find work.
when you're a freelancer,
Yeah.
like you can't just like do the bare minimum like
No.
some people could do at roles. Like you have to work hard. And we, like me, Chris and Michael, all want to work hard and we want to make a difference. But yeah, our longest thing we do normally is 24 weeks. Is that 4 months maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why we say 24 weeks actually. Maybe it's something to do with psychology.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, so we're constantly looking for new people to work with. But luckily, because of, especially Michael is so known for his work at Ryanair, we get lots of people coming to us. But we also, we do, we chat on podcasts and we do keynotes. And also just to have a really great network of people that we know in the industry who are also, I think the more times we have this conversation, and sometimes I'm like, God, I feel like a broken record, or me and Michael are saying similar things, because the point is like that is the base of the point is where we believe most people are going wrong. And the more that we bang this drum, the more conversations I have with people saying, yeah, actually, or they're at an agency and they go, yeah, we need to, we're not thinking about it like this. So we know that more conversations are happening, which is great, and that we are, I guess, some of the early people to be thinking just in this way, and not doing all the other stuff and saying, yeah, we do X, Y, and Z. We don't, but we know the best people who do pretty much all parts of social. And for one of our clients, we're helping them hire freelancers. We'll message you actually. Yeah, so we're looking at who is the best for different things and how we can put these teams together, because they will be cheaper than working with agencies, and I think they will deliver better results.
No, completely. It's quite fun because I have a few friends of mine who are about to go freelance, and I say the same thing that that we're talking about here. You're an agency, and it's the same sort of business model. It's like A, it's all down to reputation, and B, it's down to like the quality of the work. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to come off on this, but I'll tell you what happened. About 6-7 months ago, I was doing a couple of days' work for this brand, just like doing a thing. And I sent them in the work, and they said they'd get back to me, and then they didn't get back to me for 2 hours because they got pulled into a meeting. And I said, okay, I'm going to do 2 hours tomorrow, because I had nothing on the next day. So I was like, I'm going to do 2 hours the next day. And they were like, why? And I said, because I haven't done a full day. Like, I just don't want to bill you for a full day when I haven't done a full day. Now, if I had something on the next day, I might not have done it, but they've had me back since. And it's like down to like where you say, like, if your whole business model is, I need people to know that, like, A, they're in good hands, B, I'm going to do the day, like, and like, and if you're having a bad, everyone has a bad day, everyone has a sick, everyone, all that sort of stuff, but it's fun to hear an agency have that business model that a freelancer has versus, let's be honest, 99% of marketing agencies that have that retainer model that you think, you kind of know you have a year, or you have 2 years with, usually it's a year. So yeah. I was going to ask one last question. Hang on, let me get it open. Oh yeah, that was it. Right. This is going to sound like a loaded question based on what we've just spoken about. But what is your social strategy for Slice? Like, do you have a...
Yeah, no, this is the worst thing ever, because we don't even really make content for Slice. We are so, like, we set up this business, and luckily we got a client straight away, which was, I think, a stroke of luck and good timing, and all of these things worked out. And then from there, when we announced Slice, we've had lots of interest, and we have just been doing the work. So there is no social strategy yet. There will be, because we know that we've seen other people in the space do really well in this area, and we know that as time goes on and there's new people doing new exciting things in the space, you need to continue reaching new people, or just the same people, to just hammer home that message as well. So it is very much on the old list, but I just don't even know how to run it. Like, running a business is just all so new. HMRC, payroll,
Yes.
pensions,
Yeah.
it's quite a lot. So social,
Yeah.
sadly, is not high up on our agenda because luckily we have had lots of inbounds, but it will be it will be. So I'll come back to you when we got one.
Okay, fine. I'll have you back on in 2 years and we'll see how it goes. Well, thank you so much for taking part. Genuinely, it's been such a pleasure to chat to you again. So, yeah.
Thank you. It's been so lovely to chat.
What an episode, what a chat. I loved hearing her frank thoughts on corporate smoke and mirrors, and I completely agree that everyone in social should at the very least try and become a content creator in some capacity to really understand the platforms. I highly recommend you check out her TikTok, which is linked in the show notes, but what was your biggest takeaway? Comment it below. If you're enjoying these, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up on YouTube or give it a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. And if you think you have a friend or a small business or a co-worker who would enjoy this episode, please pass the pod on to them. Just pass it on to one person. It helps more than you'll ever know. In the next episode, we'll be speaking to Richard Cook, who is the social media lead at Monzo. We'll talk about the challenges of making finances fun and social friendly while walking on legal eggshells, as well as his time being a social media creative at Spotify. So don't forget to subscribe for all that. Godspeed and keep creating.